Chapter 7. The Deadliest Traffic Jam. I can't exactly remember what happened 35 years ago when I read John chapter 3, but I believe two words caught my attention. The first word was believe. That whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. John chapter 3, verse 15 and 16. I had known John 3:16 since I was a little boy. I had memorized it. I believe that many of you have memorized this verse too. On that day, 35 years ago, I realized that though I had known and memorized John 3:16, I had never believed it. All the Jews in Moses' time had been informed that if they were bitten by a serpent, then they had to immediately look at the brass serpents. I am sure that this was broadcast to all the Jews in the wilderness. I'm sure that every mother reminded her children over and over to look at the brass serpent if they were bitten. But I am also sure that not everyone looked at the brass serpent when they were bitten. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the majority looked at the poisonous serpent when they were bitten and tried to kill it. In other words, they all knew that they had to look at the brass serpent, but few believed that just looking at it was enough to save them. So they did not look at the brass serpent, and they died. I too knew that John 3:16 told me that the way to everlasting life was by believing. Like the Jews in the wilderness, I too thought that knowing John 3:16 was enough. So instead of just believing in Jesus, I thought that by adding some religious works, I would go to heaven. But the Bible tells us that merely knowing the promise in John 3:16 is useless. What is important is believing John 3:16. On that special day, God opened my eyes to see the word believe. I realized that knowledge is what I have in my head, while believe is what I have in my heart. And there is only a gap of about 15 centimeters between my head and my heart. For the Jews in the wilderness, the gap between their head and their eyes was only 1 centimeter. Yet those who only knew that they had to look at the brass serpents in their head had died. But those who looked at the brass serpent with their eyes lived. On that special day 35 years ago, I realized that I needed to clear the traffic jam between my head and my heart. I had the knowledge of John 3:16 in my head for almost 35 years. But unless I believed the promise in John 3:16 in my heart, my sins would not be removed and I would not have everlasting life. The Jakarta traffic jam prevents many people from reaching their destination in time. But this spiritual traffic jam has stopped millions in church from ever entering the kingdom of God. This is the deadliest traffic jam. Be sure that you believe that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life.